My name is Amit Gilutz. I grew up in Israel, and that's where I studied composition first. And then I moved to the US and studied in Ithaca and New York City. And the next year I'm going to spend in Germany. And I started playing piano when I was 12, and I really fell in love with Beethoven's music. And I was growing up in the south of Israel, where Beethoven, you know, I mean, obviously he had some kind of like perceived authority and tied to this kind of elite circle of classical music lovers, but it was also quite exotic, actually, you know, for a 12-year-old to kind of follow this figure and learn his music and so on. And I just heard one of his sonatas. I think it's number 25. I can't remember. It's one of the more simple sonatas. So it's a piece that I felt like I could perceive and kind of understand at that age, and more than that, I felt like I could make something like that myself, the slow movement, and that's basically how it started. I wanted to make like little sad C minor lullabies, you know, in the spirit of Beethoven.
You're using the gamelan. Why?
Well, I've always loved gamelan music. My parents traveled to Bali when I was a kid, and they came back with tapes with gamelan music, and it was playing in our house and in the car for many, many years. And I just found it enchanting. And then later on, I also really learned to like and be fascinated by Western composers that used gamelan in their music, starting with Debussy, but then also with Britten, Claude Vivier, Colin McPhee, and others. And so then at Cornell University, where I was studying, there was a project to write for string quartet and gamelan. So that was kind of a given, and just a project that I was really excited about and wanted to participate in. But then what I wanted to do with that was kind of to make that meeting of these two very different ensembles together on stage kind of be the theme of the piece itself.
Yeah, because you're using prepared...
Yeah, the string quartet is prepared, yeah, and by doing that, its sound world comes a little closer to the sound world of the gamelan instruments.
Okay, so that's why you chose to do it prepared.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And you're using the voice of Edward Said.
Yeah. So in doing a little bit research, when I was working for the piece, I stumbled across a few lectures and interviews with Edward Said online, and I just really fell in love with his, you know, his personality, his ideas that I feel very close to, and so I decided to incorporate his voice in the piece, and he talks about sort of understanding yourself through understanding the other, whoever that other may be, and so I thought it was very fitting for this kind of piece. Towards the end of the piece, there is this idea, for me it kind of symbolizes this idea that through multiculturalism or through an encounter with the other, it's actually like a win-win situation. So sonically, everybody in the ensemble gets more sonic possibilities. You know, the gamelan is being bowed, like you say, and the string players move to play on gongs themselves.
Yeah. So they have to adapt a little bit to become more close to each other.
Yeah, or learn a few tricks from each other, or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. And most of your pieces are socially engaged. Do you feel obliged to do this? Why?
A lot of them are, not all of them, certainly not all of them. And it's something that I've been doing more in recent years as an attempt to, first of all, to write music that I'm passionate about. So really to look for that thing that I want to do very passionately. And sometimes abstract musical ideas are just not enough for me. And then the other thing is to kind of bring together different aspects of my doing in composition, which is sort of the main thing that I do. So social activism as well. Yeah. I do feel obliged. I feel privileged in relation to a lot of other people in this planet, and I think that privilege is also a responsibility.
But it has nothing to do because you're from Israel and the Palestinian complex situation.
Well, it does. I mean, it does, and the piece also does, because Edward Said, of course, was Palestinian, and sort of a great supporter of the Palestinian cause. And actually, in the interview that I took the excerpts from, he's talking about Israel-Palestine, but I kind of took that out of the piece because I think the principles that he's talking about are more important than the time and space that he's referring to. I mean, growing up in Israel, yes, I think I sort of developed, like my politics sort of evolved around this issue of solidarity or empathy. So really exactly the stuff that he talks about identifying yourself in the other and being able to sympathize with that other. Yeah.
And how is your work being criticized in Israel?
This work has not been performed in Israel. It was broadcast on the radio, as well as another piece that is also conceptual and that uses the official military march of the Israeli military and sort of deconstructs it. I think it resonates. I don't know. We'll have to ask people, you know, how they actually respond to it. I mean, my hope is that that the piece sort of allows a space to ponder on those quotes from Said, and for people to really take something from it. But I want to say earlier about this idea of feeling obliged. I don't feel obliged to write music that does those things. I feel obliged to act, you know, in the world, and doing that through music is only one aspect of that. Yeah.
And I saw an early piece of your White Darkness from 2005. It's completely different. Is this a new direction?
Yeah, I mean, 2005 is, what is it now? Yeah. It's been so many years, and in the life of a young composer, it's like things from 2 years ago already is, you know,
it's really completely different.
Yes, I mean, that's a piece that I wrote during my second year of my undergrad studies at the Jerusalem Academy. I was studying with Mal Kopitman at the time. So yeah, I was interested in a very different approach for musical material, for development. I did already at an early stage have I made kind of failed attempts to write political music, so like pieces that I wouldn't show anyone.
Oh, really?
But yeah, but they existed back then too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think you find your voice now?
Well, that would be a nice story to tell, if I could say that. I think from looking from perspective at my work, I kind of see these fluctuations where at certain moments I find something. I don't know if I can call it my voice, but I feel like I write the music that I should be writing at a given moment. And then there's a piece or a few pieces or a period where I am dissatisfied with what I'm writing and I'm searching and then hopefully finding again something.
Yeah. On your website I saw that you have a desire for more democratic forms of music making.
Last year I composed together with Roy Motz, who's an Israeli flutist, a flute concerto, and in it we tried to explore that idea and those themes more deeply. So for instance, the audience participates in the piece itself.
How?
They're reading texts out loud all together in like a mumbly choir. So the piece is referring to or is based on a book by Naomi Klein, The Shock Doctrine, which is also a very political book. And the audience members, together with the evening program, they get one page each from the book, a different page. And then at a certain moment in the piece, they all start reading together while the orchestra keeps on playing. And so part of the idea is, of course, to break that barrier, but also to engage in a collective activity, which, you know, if theoretically if there's 500 people in the audience, at that night, in 2 minutes, they read the entire book together.
The role of improvisation, are you writing everything down or is there some room for...
Yeah, I've been experimenting with that and I have very different solutions. So for instance, yesterday's piece, even, I have a very clear idea of how it should sound, but there's actually a lot of leeway and a lot of freedom for the players, especially when it comes to timing of events, but also some aleatory and improvisation. In the Flute Concerto there's improvisation, and also improvisation becomes a more substantial part of my working process because like the piece yesterday, I worked with all the instruments myself, both the string instruments and the gamelan instruments, just through improvisation, making recordings and collecting the material that I want to work with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.